Hi folks, my name's Dane and welcome to the recap of the third, I believe, Words4Every1 Writers Group meetup. This happened on October the 10th at the Arts4Every1 Centre in High Wycombe, and this video is to kind of take you through what we talked about. So we changed it up a little bit actually, which I'll talk more about in a minute, and we had some writing tips instead of marketing tips. Although obviously we also had our guest speaker, who this month was Sakib Desmuk, who's a local author who writes about Wycombe actually as well. We also had our writing activities and editing workshops, and then later on we also had some readings. I won't dwell on this too much as I'm always me, you know, but my name's Dane. I'm the author of a book called No Rest for the Wicked. I'm also a social media marketer by day as well, and I kind of mix the two together to help you guys out with these things. So as I said, more changes coming. We're looking at writing tips and tricks, but first to recap about what happened last time. So we kickstarted some new writing activities. We also spoke to author J.G. Clay, who's a horror author, and he talked about where he finds his inspiration. We had our introduction to social networking, and we also had some performances as well. So today we're just going to go through some different tips and tricks. There's necessarily no narrative to them or no order. They're just some little things that you might be able to apply. So to kick things off, we're looking at the 8-point story arc, which was actually a concept that Aristotle came up with, and it's called the Aristotelian 8-point story arc by some people. And we're going to use Star Wars as an example here because that happens to use this, as do many kind of Hollywood films and popular books. And the idea here is that this is a simple kind of story structure that can, you know, be applied to any story, or that you can use to outline your own story. So we start off with the first point is stasis, which is, this is before the story even begins, so it's just setting the routine, the day-to-day routine. And in Star Wars, for example, that's Luke Skywalker is on the farm just doing a bit of work. Then comes the trigger, which the trigger is the thing that causes the rest of the, you know, the story to happen. So in Star Wars, this is when the stormtroopers kill Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru. Then we've got the quest. So the quest is when the main character finds out what they need to do next and where they need to go. So again, this is in Star Wars. This is when Luke goes to see Obi-Wan Kenobi and, you know, finds out more about the history and what's happening. Then we've got a surprise and a critical choice, and these tend to come one after the other, and they tend to be looped as well. So a surprise is something unpleasant happens, a critical choice is they get out of it. An example of a surprise would be stormtroopers showing up when they're in Mos Eisley, and the critical choice is to run away from the stormtroopers, and then, you know, they get a bit further, and then, you know, we're caught in a tractor beam, it's pulling us in. That's the surprise. The critical choice is that they hide. There are a lot of hiding and running, really. Then comes the climax. So this is the big showdown at the end. And in Star Wars, you could argue that they have two, really. But the main one is obviously the big fight at the end when they're trying to destroy the Death Star. And then there's a reversal when the fortunes are changed. Something happens that changes things. So again, in Star Wars, boom, Death Star's exploded. Hooray. And then there's the resolution, which is what happens afterwards. And again, in Star Wars, ends up, they're getting all their medals. Very nice. Right, so we'll look at spontaneous prose, and it's also called stream of consciousness writing, and this is something that Jack Kerouac and a few of the Beat members used to do. And basically it involves just writing without stopping to think. It's almost automatic writing. So typically people then do little to no editing on it afterwards as well to keep it quite pure, although you can do if you want to. And it usually features kind of long drawn out sentences that ramble on. But it can be a really good way to get rid of writer's block as well, so it's worth a play with. Live writing is another one, so writing on location, so you're sitting in a coffee shop writing about what people are talking about, for example. Don't get caught, it's really awkward if you do. But you could also use it to write about nature, or it's popular to do it at events, so you might want to do live blogging, for example. It can be a really good way to get some inspiration about something, even if you've not really got anything in mind. Just give it a go and see what comes out. And the next Writers Group session, we'll be doing this in the church. Found writing is another cool one. So you basically use material that you've found elsewhere to create something new. So you might make a story out of newspaper clippings or something. Now this is really popular with experimental writers. So poets, for example, sometimes wrote poems using only the words that they saw around them. Or you could take a second-hand book and cross out bits of the text just to use, you know, words that you're left with. Hypertext. Now we've got a regular, Dave Ford, and he'll be happy to talk to anyone about this really. But basically with hypertext stories, the narrative isn't linear, so you can choose different points to navigate away from. So it's kind of like how Wikipedia works. So you can click links throughout the text to take you to different pages. So hypertext was very popular in the early days of the internet, and it can also be done with YouTube annotations as well. So you can do hypertext with video. Then we've got the three types of narrative. So we've got associational, which is effectively where the ending is a bit ambiguous and the reader decides, or the storyline even can be ambiguous. And we've got circular, which is where the story loops around and round, which is much rarer than the other two really. And I often see this with time travel stories. That seems to be the main way that people do it. And then episodic, which is what we're most used to, which is just where one thing follows on from another. Then we've got active and passive voice. So active voice is usually preferable because it uses fewer words and it's more direct. And basically active voice is John sheared the sheep. Passive is the sheep was sheared by John. So if you want to get technical here, sheep is the object. It goes subject, verb, object. So subject is John, verb is sheared, sheep is object. And passive is object, verb, subject, which you don't want. So different types of editing, this is something that you're likely to come across at some point if you're working professionally really. And this is the two types of editing, although there is a third, which is proofreading really. But conceptual editing is when the editor looks at how you can improve the story. So they point out mistakes or say, oh, this scene wasn't particularly good, you might want to rewrite it, or they'll check for realism or things that couldn't possibly happen. Copy editing is different because that's focusing on looking at typing mistakes, maybe layout, depending, grammar mistakes, that kind of thing. So you want to make sure you know which type of editing you're asking for. By the time it gets to proofreading, it should be there so that all the proofreader is looking for is a potential mistake. Crippled verbs, so this is any offshoot of the word to be, so be, are, is. So try to avoid these where possible. They just make the work sound a bit more clunky. So for example, instead of there was a flock of sheep in the valley, you can use a flock of sheep grazed in the valley. It's slightly more descriptive. Then we've got fake intensifiers. So these are things that we use when we feel insecure, and we do it in natural language as well as when we're writing. And basically they add nothing to what you're saying. So some examples are really, or very, completely, simply. It's really stupid. No, it's not, it's just stupid. Close observation, so this is when you write about something but you do it in very close detail. So for example, if you're writing about a pencil, look at the grooves where it was sharpened. So this helps you to look at the world from a different perspective. And I actually did an activity on this when I was at university where we had to observe other classmates' faces, and it is a very unusual experience. I wouldn't necessarily do it multiple times, but it's worth trying these things. And it can be used to great effect even within novels, for example. So we're on to marketing tips and tricks as well. We've just got a few of these. So keywords, first of all. Keywords are effectively the words that people use when they're searching for things. So if you want to get found by search engines, you want to use keywords. So the most important places for them are in blog titles and YouTube video titles. So you've got here, for example, instead of Tony Open Mic, you've got Tony Dubinsky changes live at Arts4Every1 High Wycombe. So that instead includes his full name, the name of the song, the fact that it's live, the fact that it was Arts4Every1, and the fact that it was in High Wycombe. So think about what people might search for. So what words do they use? Do they use car, automobile, people carrier? Again, if you're a comedian, are you a comedian, a comic? If you're a woman, are you a comedian? So you've got to think about these things. Then there's analytics, which is a very powerful tool, and Google Analytics is probably the most well-known one, and it's quite easy to use. And this is effectively software that you can install on a website, and it will show you detailed information on your performance. So, the number of views, where people are coming from, what they're doing, how long they're spending on your website. We could do a workshop on it potentially, so we'll see on that one. I would say you should install it on any website that you're running, really. Most social networks also offer their own forms of analytics. So for YouTube, for example, you can see how long people are watching videos for. So use analytics to find out what works and then act on it. Outreach, that's another one. So this refers to reaching out to people, often bloggers or journalists, that you don't necessarily know, but it can be a good way to team up with people, for example, who run a blog site, and to get reviews for your books or for your work. So some simple steps to carrying out outreach. create a list of people to contact, and then make a template that you can use. You're then going to want to adapt that message slightly just to make sure all of your messages are relevant to them. Always offer a freebie, so either a free copy of the book, or you might be able to offer their readers a discount or something like that, you know. And keep track of who you've spoken to and then follow up with them afterwards. I've called this brown nosing because I couldn't think of a better way to refer to it. But essentially, just say nice things to other people to try to get retweets. So one example is, you know, loving the new Mark Haddon book. Everyone should get a copy. And then Mark Haddon picks that up and then he'll retweet that to all of his followers. Make sure it's natural though. This is the main thing. Just don't, you know, just make sure you tag people. Say nice things anyway, but tag people. And a few further resources. So these are some websites that give you marketing tips that you guys might be interested in. So this Search Engine Land and Search Engine Journal will effectively tell you what you need to know about getting found by search engines. There's Social Media Today and Social Media Examiner, which tell you all about, obviously, social media marketing. The Next Web, The Drum, and HubSpot all do just sort of general marketing and social networking news as well. So that's that for that. Another thing to mention, at this workshop we discussed the potential of writing a book together, so there'll be a different theme for each workshop. People can submit their entries to me via email. All formats are welcome, and the best submissions will go into a book, so make sure you do that. So another thing we did, we had a writing challenge. So we got people into groups of 3 and we challenged them to write a story together, but only person A could use adverbs, only person B could use adjectives, and only person C could use verbs. Now, we had a lot of people at the session who kept forgetting the difference between them. So to recap, adverbs describe a movement, so quickly. Adjectives describe a noun, so hairy. And verbs are a movement word, so running, for example. And verbs and adverbs typically get paired together, so running quickly. Then we had our editing workshops. Then we heard from Saqib Deshmukh, who's a local author. He's written a book called West Richardson Street. He's actually writing a trilogy, and he told us all about some of the research that he does, some of the history behind the books, and he gave us an update on his progress as well. After that we had a break, and then we talked about this month's theme, which is Halloween. So any interpretations of Halloween welcome, no particular word count, you know, free reign on that, and all genres and formats are welcome as well. So email your work to me before the next session to be considered for the anthology. Then we had our readings. Our next workshop, it hasn't happened yet at the time of recording, but this might come out a bit later. But Saturday the 7th of November, 3 till 6 p.m. And we've got graphic novelist Elaine Will, who's coming all the way from Canada, stopping off with us as part of her UK tour. So that should be awesome. So, thanks a lot for watching. Don't forget to hit subscribe. There'll be more videos coming soon of future writing workshops, and I'll see you soon. Bye.